Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing part 199 of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights. You know, the penultimate to 200. So we're going to take a wonderful look at, some of these really cool mods people be making and use them to talk about some of the wonderful biodiversity that we share our world with. So yeah, today, as I mentioned, we're getting 100 part, nearly next to part 200. So that's going to be really awesome. Next one's going to be 200. Hope we get some nice mods to do something special for that. That'd be really awesome. But thank you guys for watching so far. I know it's been quite a popular series. I know people like me covering these mods and showing off people's work, and it's been really awesome, and I'm proud of how much it's grown. It's really awesome. Yeah, just going to thank you guys a little bit before I get started, but hopefully it's a little bit of a shorter one today. We have got a few different frog species. I know we love frogs. One extinct animal, and then we've got a couple really interesting ungulates, and we've got a couple other cool mammals that we'll get into. So we're going to be starting off with the frogs. These are all done by Scott. Scott is like the resident exhibits man, so doing all the exhibit stuff. So we're going to have a first look at the three-striped poison frog. So let's have a look at one in the light, as we like to do. Perfect. Look at this cute little guy. This is Armadurina trivoltalia, formerly Epidobates trivoltalia. These guys are a species of poison dart frog in the family Dendrobatidae, commonly known as the three-striped poison frog. And they're found in Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Guyana, Peru, Suriname, Venezuela, and potentially Ecuador and French Guiana. So in terms of their description, the male three-striped poison frog has a snout to vent length of about 42 millimeters, or about 1.6 inches, while the female has a vent length of 55 millimeters, or 2.17 inches. They have a slightly protruding snout with no teeth, finely granulated skin on the dorsal surface, and smooth skin on the flanks and ventral surfaces. The digits are unwebbed, and the first finger is longer than the second finger. The coloration of the species kind of varies depending on locales, but in general it has a black body and sides, a black belly with surface blue posteriorly, and yellow to green to right brown stripes on light brown limbs. So that's quite cool. And two yellowish green lateral stripes come down like that on it, which is quite cool. In terms of its biology, though, these guys are a species of diurnal frog, terrestrial species that are found among the leaf litter of the forest floor in both primary and secondary tropical forests. The main food of the species is ants, which is plentiful on the forest floor, and these guys are territorial. The males are territorial during their breeding season, but the females aren't. Typical for their breeding, their eggs are laid in small clutches underneath fallen leaves during the raining season. It takes the eggs about 15 days or so to hatch, which time the male guards them, and he carries them on his back to a suitable ephemeral pool or waterfall crevice. So things like bromeliad, little things like that. A lot of dart frogs do that. It's not exclusive to this species of dart frog. But then they develop again for about 41 to 54 days, so about a month and a half, and then they undergo metamorphosis and become adults. So that's quite cool. Another really cool little species, if I do say so myself. So look at this little cutie. We'll have a quick look at the Zoopedia before we move on, but there's not too many differences between these other frogs. That's about right. Stripes are green, but yellow and orange specimens do occur. They are diurnal terrestrial species found among the leaf litter, as we mentioned that before, so they're terrestrial and come out during the day. The particular toxin of the species is plumatoxin, specifically plumatoxin 251D, while specimens have the ability to convert their toxins into amploplumotoxins, meaning direct contact with a wild three-striped poison dart frog can cause severe cramping, local paralysis, and seizures. So you've got to be very careful when touching these frogs in the wild. In captivity, because we don't feed them the same foods, they actually don't get that poison. So they're safe in the captivity, but in the wild, you better be very careful of what you're touching with these frogs. But next up, we've got another cool species. The next one's owned by Scott as well. This is the Rio Centenno poison frog, so a very similar species. So this, we're going to have a look and see if no, we want one on a pad or something. Very beautiful colors this one has. There we are, this is perfect. So this is Extrabates capivalis, also known as the Centenno poison frog or Rio Centenno poison frog. These guys are a species of poison frog, and they're endemic to northwestern Peru and southern Ecuador. Its natural habitat, though, is tropical moist lowland forests, and you can see it's got a very distinct colour to it. These guys have an adult snout to vent length of between 15 to 17 millimeters, or just 0.6 to 0.7 inches. And they're very small, actually, for poison dart frogs. They're on the smaller side. And you can see black with yellow spotches and with orange-red spotches along the row. And you can see this yellow spots kind of on the groin, and then they get more orange to reddish as they go up the body there. So it's really cool. And the first finger on the forelimb is considered shorter than the second finger. So you can see that kind of really interesting colour they've got there. In terms of their distribution, they were first collected in 1929 on the south side of the Maranon River, near its confluence on the Centenno River northwestern Peru, a wet lowland site at elevations about 200 meters above sea level. It was rediscovered in the same locality 77 years later, and a single specimen has been observed on the north side of the river, and it has been found in high altitudes in the Colorado de Corridor at about 20 kilometers northeast of this area, and Santa Rosa, and near Patagonia in the Zamora Chetupule province in southern Ecuador. So it is a little bit more common than we originally thought. And the habitat is typically wet parts of forests and things like that, and areas close to streams. In terms of biology, very similar to our last frog, diurnal, terrestrial, and in the breeding season, the male will advertise his presence by calling from hidden positions among low foliage, emitting short shrieks at interregular intervals, and the eggs may be laid on the forest floor among leaf litter, and then the tadpoles are transported on the parent's back to Father Malta temporary pools of water that may be developed in heliconia plants. So those, as I mentioned, the bromeliads and heliconias. So they are where they kind of put their babies, and they do the same thing, very similar to most other species of dart frog. They are sadly considered vulnerable, though. They have been little studied, but remote terrain where they have been found means they've been a little disturbed. There is some small-scale gold mining in the area, and it's not known whether they infect the frogs, but the population does seem to be stable. And they are common in certain part of their range, and they do have quite a wide range. So they are considered vulnerable, mainly just because, as I mentioned, there's small issues like that. But being a dart frog as well, got the chytrid fungus and things like that, there is a lot of things that could potentially harm it in the future, and that could obviously change quite a bit. So that's another one done by Scott. We'll have a look at the Zoopedia as well. See what else we can get information. We already mentioned that. Primarily eat small invertebrates, which makes sense. They are a moderately toxic species. Sin secretes plumotoxin B, a toxin secreted by other alpha baits and oophagia species like the diabloto poison frog. And while most predators will avoid eating dart frogs due to poison, the fired belly snake is the only known natural predator of dart frogs, and they have evolved a resistance to the frog's toxins, allowing them to consume them without harm. So that's really cool there. And they can share habitat with these guys, so that's part of the frog pack as well. So that's really, really cool. Really big fan of that. Another really awesome species. So, next up, we're going to have a look at the last frog done by Scott, but this is not a poison dart frog, this is a bit bigger. We've got the Smoky jungle frog, another really cool species. So let's have a wonderful look at you over there. Look at how beautiful you are. Big, big friend. How amazing. So the Smoky jungle frog, or Leptodactylus pentadactylus, these guys are a species of frog in the family Leptodactylidae, and they are found in northern South America as well as parts of Central America. So its natural habitats are things like tropical and subtropical moist broadleaf forests, subtropical or tropical swamps, subtropical or tropical moist montane forests, rivers, marshes, intermittent freshwater marshes, and aquaculture pools. So they're quite a common species. They are considered least concern. They're called the Huá by the Kasa language in Brazil. In terms of their physical characteristics, males of this large, robust frog are slightly larger than females. They attain a maximum snout to vent length of about 18 centimeters or about 7 inches, while the maximum length for females is about 17.6 centimeters or about 6.9 inches. So a little bit smaller. The body is, you see, quite robust, and their head is large, with an acutely rounded snout and prominent trapezium, which is kind of that hole there that covers the ears. The skin on the dorsum and the venter is smooth, and prominent dorsolateral dermal folds extend back to the orbit to the groin, so there's kind of a big fold going back their body there. The fingers and toes are long, with slender tips but lack webbing, Breeding males have greatly swollen forelimbs and one large pointed black spine on the inner surface of the thumb, and two black spikes on each side of the chest. And the dorsum is tan and reddish brown with a broad reddish brown marks on the body and yellowish tan dorsolateral folds. You can see that colour there. So they're very interesting colours. The upper lip is tan with a brown margin, and the ventral is cream with a bold dark and black mottling, especially on the belly and hind lips, and you see very bronze colour. So very interesting colour it's got to it. Very, very cool. So these guys are found in lowlands below 1,200 meters, from Costa Rica to the Pacific lowlands, Ecuador, and throughout the Guianas into the northern two-thirds of the Amazon basin as well. So that's quite cool. In terms of the habitat, as I mentioned, they love tropical rainforests. They invade dry forests and lower montane forests. They are a nocturnal species, unlike those dart frogs. They spend its day in burrows, under logs, or hidden in a leaf litter, and defense mechanisms it has is noxious skin secretions, or posturing by inflating its lungs and standing up on all fours to kind of make itself more dangerous. And when grabbed, they can actually emit quite a high-pitched scream to scare away predators. It determines its feeding ecology. Juveniles feed on small arthropods, but large adults can feed on large arthropods, frogs, lizards, snakes, small birds, and mammals such as bats. So frogs, generally, especially when they get to this kind of size, they're on that seafood diet. They seafood, they eat it. They'll pretty much eat anything they'll put in their mouths. And tadpoles are omnivores, so they'll feed on vegetation, tadpoles, and even eggs of their own species, but also just generally eggs of other tadpoles as well. In terms of the reproductive biology, so how they kind of court each other is males will call solitarily from the margins of pools and backwaters of streams with a loud, typical, frog croak at intervals about 5 to 10 seconds, and then the attractive female is grasped by the male and held firmly, to make the eggs. And about 1,000 eggs are deposited in a large foam nest, and by backwards and forward motions of the male's hind limbs that mix air, water, eggs, and secretions into the nest. This usually is deposited into a depression adjacent to water. These eggs will then hatch in 2 to 3 days, with subsequent rain flooding the nest site, and the tadpoles move into the pool or slow-moving stream. Development is actually quite rapid for these guys as well, and metamorphosis occurs at about 4 weeks after hatching. And tadpoles will attain a maximum total length of about 3 inches, about 83 millimeters, with the body being ovoid and a rimmed snout with large eyes, and the oral disc is nearly temporal and bears finely serrated jaw sheaths as well. So that's quite interesting as well. And as well, the skin of these guys, not as poisonous as poison dart frogs, but they have leptotoxin, which is a protein toxin that's quite dangerous for a lot of animals, and that dissuades them. So let's have a look at the Zoopedia as well to have another good look. Smoky jungle frog. Yeah, we already mentioned that. Secretes huge amounts of toxic mucus, very similar to like cane toads. People can get skin rashes and stinging from touching one, but also can cause sneezing and eye swelling from just being in the same room as one being handled. Leftover residue is even lethal to other frogs, which are leptotoxin. And we mentioned that before. So yeah, another really cool species. Sorry about the coughing. It's just winter, and I always get a cough during the winter. But yeah, that's awesome. A really, really nice one. So that's not Great Cakes. Scott, another great mod from Scott. And all those frogs are done by him. He really has like a bit of a monopoly on the exhibit species scene at the moment. So it's really cool to see all these kind of really funky species coming along. But yeah, next up we've got a Great Cakes mod. The only Great Cakes mod today, surprisingly. It's nice to have some other modders get the spotlight. But Great Cakes, is typically always, dominating the scene. But here we've got a very interesting extinct species. So this one is called Florida. Let me grab it because it's got a very Florida Tagulus dolichotheris, I believe you say that. Very interesting species of ancient camel. And camels were actually originally evolved in North America, then spread out, and only became extinct in North America about 11,000 years ago, with the western camel becoming extinct at the end of the Ice Age. So we think of like camels and llamas being African, Eurasian, and South American animals, but they're just like horses. They originated in North America, and they have a very rich fossil history in North America, and this is just one of the many species that amplify that. So these guys were actually assigned to 2 different families and 4 species, but now they're considered a single species, and they are known from 60 total specimens found on the Thomas Farm locality in Florida, and other species in the genus are known from Texas and Nebraska. And there's so many other camelids found, you know, they range from Mexico and Panama as well, so quite a wide range. And these guys come from the early Miocene, so between 19 to 17 million years ago. And these guys are named for their extremely elongated snout, with the Greek Dolonkon means long, and Theros means there, which means beast, so it's basically the long beast. And it's its own group, the Florida Tulugidae, with its own really interesting group of camels. And in terms of its geographical range, I mentioned it's only found in Florida, but as an extinct species, probably had a much wider range than that, probably ranged across a lot of the southern US. That's probably the best way to put it. So the holotype skull is very interesting. It was collected at Thomas Farm by field crews of Harvard University's Museum of Comparative Zoology in the 1930s. And it was actually placed in the original extinct family Hypertragidae, but then is kind of considered its own thing. There are 3 relatively large-sized brachydont artiodactyls found in here as well, and they are thought to actually resemble quite a small percentage of the fauna. And there is less than 100 specimens known of these guys. Very, very interesting. This talks mainly about kind of their relationness to other animals, so I'm not going to get too much into that. But we're going to have a look on the Zoopedia, so you can get more information. So then we'll have a look. So among other fossil camelids, we mentioned that, the holotype of Florigeturus dolichotheres, we mentioned that, are extremely rare, less than 100 specimens known. We kind of already mentioned all that. There's not too much known about this guy, just because it's, as I mentioned, so rare in the fossil record, and not too dissimilar from one of other extinct species. Not too much information available on this guy. A lot of research probably, but we'll have a look anyway. And even though he's like really lesser known, very niche prehistoric animals that are commissioned, I think they're commissioned by Cenozoic Lover, but you always see that she gives them either all, you know. Great Cakes always does a really awesome job, and I love their reconstructions of extinct animals. They really do a nice job of bringing extinct animals to life and making them feel realistic, so definitely a big fan of that, and you can have a good look at that one there. And we'll have a cute little baby as well. So yeah, it just shows the diversity of camels back in the day in America. They were like little camels run around like mouse deer, and there were some that were like giraffes. Some were quite huge as well, so there was quite a lot of variety of really interesting extinct types of camels and things. And I think we've covered a few of them, and I hope we get to cover a lot more as the series goes on and on, as I mentioned, because we're going to part 200 now, almost. We're on the second to last one there, but we'll have a look. So now, the really awesome one there. So that's Great Cakes mod, so that we can leave that one to do its own thing. Next up, we have got the Yucatan, we got the Yucatan brown bucket deer. So this one is done by Mega Kebabs, who's really trying to expand the horizons a little bit, you know, doing something that isn't a primate, which is always good. You know, I love to see people out trying new things. And this is a really cool little one as well. So this is the Yucatan brown bucket, Odoclurus pandora, and is a small deer species native to Central America. So it's very interesting. It was once treated as a distinct subspecies of grey brocket, or a subspecies of the red brocket, but in 2021 it actually got described as its own species and put in the genus Odocoelurus, so it's now a close relative of the white-tailed and mule deer, which is quite interesting. So that's really interesting as well. So they're related to mule deer, and that shows how funky taxonomy can be. So this is considered the smallest member of that group. This is, you know, a little relative of the mule and white-tailed deer. So that shows how funky taxonomy is. Among other features, it's quite a small deer. They differ from both the red and grey brockets by the shape and measurement of their skulls and antlers. And they also differ from the Central American red brocket, which is locally sympatric with the Yucatan brown brocket. Is grey-brown colour and rather than over reddish colour that this guy has. So this is very interesting. So let's have actually a little look. So the Mazda deers is Mazda americana. So the red brocket, things like that. They are related to these kind of deer, but they're paraphyletic as well. So I think a lot of them had been split. Some like the red brocket, you know, and then you have the other species paraphyletic as well. But it's really, really interesting, the taxonomy of deer, and if I reckon I could do a whole video on just that taxonomy of like the mule deer. It's very much something that needs to be figured out, because it's very confusing, because it's very paraphyletic and everything as well. So it's very, very confusing in that regard. But yeah, it looks really, really cute with these guys. So let's have a look at the cute little guy here. A really awesome mod. I'm definitely a big fan. Anyway, so O. Pandora is typically found in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, Belize, and Guatemala. And while it is found in humid tropical forests like most other brocket deer, they also range into arid, relatively open habitats. So they do have a little bit of variety there. And they are considered vulnerable, probably because they live in they're poorly studied and live in a habitat that's probably getting chopped down quite a bit as well. But seeming to say like open habitats as well, there's a little bit of adaptability to them there. And makes sense if they're going to be a species that's a little bit of concern there. But yeah, really, really cool. Love to see these guys out. And even though they look just like a red brocket, they're more closely related to mule deer and white-tailed deer. I think that makes them very interesting and distinct. And I hope that taxonomy gets sorted out soon because it's very confusing. So that's Mega Kebab there, done a really good job. Next up, we have got Mr. Or Level Wolf. I don't know if Level Wolf's a Mr., but whatever. We got Level Wolf giving us the Himalayan Wolf. So this is a very interesting one. So this is one a very debated taxonomy, as we'll kind of get into. So the Himalayan Wolf, also Canis chano, or it could be just Canis chano. There is a solid argument that this could be another species of wolf, but we'll get into that a little bit next. So the taxonomy of these wolves, it is distinguished by genetic markers considered to be genetically basal to the whole Arctic grey wolf, genetically the same wolf as the Tibetan and Mongolian wolf, and in association with the African wolf. There's no really striking morphological differences between these wolves, between the Himalayas and those of Tibet, and this lineage can be found living in the Himalayas and the Tibetan Plateau and the mountains of Central Asia in high elevations, and is adapted to that low oxygen kind of environment. And some people have been actually proposing them as a different species, so that's really cool. So we'll get into that. In terms of taxonomy, it was first described by John Edward Gray in 1863, based on the skin of a wolf found shot in Chinese Tatar. And it was described as a wolf subspecies, and then it kind of got synonymized with lots of other things and things like that. But the most recent things looking into it, we'll have a look. Canis himalaris was actually proposed in 2007 to with wolf specimens from the Indian Himalayas that had different mitochondrial DNA from ones found in other parts of Asia. And at the time, they actually kind of went back and said, "Oh no, these are actually we're not going to consider them a different species. You just didn't have a great sample size." And then further field work as well as looked into this. Then this genetic lineage of Himalayan wolves has a 3.9% divergence in the mDNA cytochrome B gene when compared to whole Arctic grey wolves, which actually is a big difference considering, there's only a 2% difference between us and a chimpanzee. That is still quite a big difference between these guys, and that actually may justify considering the Himalayan wolf as a distinct species. And it has been debated. The group determined that if it was a new species, it would be Canis chano, but the geographical location of the holotype was unclear, and the group recommends that this wolf lineage be known as the Himalayan wolf and classified as Canis lupus chano until a genetic analysis of the holotypes is available. And more recent research actually indicates that does warrant species level status based on the unified species concept, the differential fitness species concept, and the biological species concept. So these are different types of species concepts that how you divide different species. So the biological species concept is the basic one that that they use in school. Is if they can reproduce and their babies can reproduce as well, then it's a species. So you won't get that excludes mules and ligers and things that can't really breed. But other species concept as well. So they seem to warrant potentially full species status. So they could potentially have 2 or 3 different species of wolves now, which is quite interesting in terms of that taxonomy there. But we'll carry on. In terms of characteristics, it has a thick woolly fur that has a dull earthy brown on the back of the tail and yellowish muzzle on the face, tummy and limbs. And they are larger than Indian and common European wolves. They reach about 110 to 180 centimeters or 45 to 70 inches in length, 68 to 76 centimeters or 27 to 30 inches tall at the shoulder, and can weigh between 30 to 55 kilograms or 6,621 pounds on average. And they do have a interesting mutation of a gene for RYR2, which is a gene that initiates cardiac extrication, so they can deal with the low oxygen levels up in the mountains. So we're going to talk a little bit more about DNA as well. So the mitochondrial DNA of 27 wolves from the Himalayas and the Tibetan Plateau was all compared. And the Himalayan wolf clade is actually believed to have diverged from other canids or other wolves about 800,000 years ago. So that's quite a big time away. It was interesting as well. And they seem to be the most genetically, if they are the same species, they're the most genetically divergent subspecies of grey wolf, or at their own species. They're, the most basal of that kind of group. And the Himalayan wolves apparently, seemingly, over the past 225,000 years, had a bottleneck, and this may be due to ancient inbreeding, isolation, and habitat loss. And there seems to be a very small amount of gene flow into Chinese indigenous dogs and dingo genes from that way, but not back, because it's harder to get. It's easy to get down a mountain than an up a mountain, of course. So some wolves in China, Mongolia also fall within this clade, indicating a common maternal ancestor that kind of came down from the mountains and bred with these wolves. And also genomic studies, including those of southern Chinese wolves and things like that, they found these clades as well, and have a bit of admixture from these wolves. But most of these DNA sequences actually, when they look at a phylogenetic tree, that shows that the Himalayan wolf is kind of the most basal, and then you have the Indian plain wolf, and then you have the late Pleistocene and Holactic grey wolves, and then you have divergence of dogs. So they're very basal, very much different, separated by evolution. They're going to be calling there. As I mentioned, separated by evolution by 800,000 years. That's north of 1 million years almost, but that's quite cool. So there is genuine argument that there could be different species. And in 2021, they did another similar study that looked at both the nuclear and mitochondrial DNA that looked at Himalayan wolves and compared them to those of the Indian subcontinent. These genetic analyses suggest that the Himalayan wolf and an Indian lowland wolf were genetically distinct from one another, and then those were both distinct from other wolf populations across the northern hemisphere, referred to as the Holactic grey wolf. These other wolves form a single mitochondrial clade, indicating they originated from a single expanse within the last 100,000 years. However, the study indicated that Himalayan wolves separated from this lineage 496,000 years ago, and the Indian lowland wolf 200,000 years ago. So they are still quite diverged as well. And there has been more talking about ghost populations, and I'm not going to get too much into that. And there is believed to be a relationship as well with African wolves. And the Himalayan Indian African wolves was proposed to represent ancient wolf lineages, with African wolf colonizing Africa and northern hemisphere radiation to the Holactic grey wolves. And looking at different studies looking at both modern and extinct grey wolf populations, but they excluded the genetically divergent lineage of the Himalayan and Indian wolves. These ancient specimens were kind of dated to be between 80,000 years old. And they also showed that the Himalayan wolf diverged between 740,000 and 691,000 years ago from the lineage that would become the Holactic grey wolf. And so that kind of supports, as I mentioned, that big divide, and potentially, talking about the Himalayan and Indian wolf being their own species. So there is an argument, and then you include the eastern and red wolf. That potentially there could be 5 species of wolf just from one. So I think I'm actually leaning to the Himalayan wolf being a pretty distinct species, because if you think of how other people would split them, there were definitely in other groups they would definitely split them, and I think this would be worthy of a split. And as I mentioned, if they fit these concepts, multiple species concepts, they should be considered their own species, in my opinion. But enough about genes and genetics. You don't really see that in a video game. We're going to go and have a talk about these little cuties and their habitats. So in China, these Himalayan wolves live on the Tibetan plateau of Gansu, Tibet, and Sichuan, and places like that. Northern India, they live in the Union Territory of Ladakh, and the Lahul and Spiti regions in northeastern Himalayan. They say that. The Himalayan wolf population in India is believed to be about 350 individuals, ranging about 700,000 kilometers as well. So they're kind of not doing too well. They're considered vulnerable at the end of the day. In terms of behavior and ecology, their howls have a lower frequency on modulated frequencies and in shorter in duration compared to Holarctic grey wolves. And the Himalayan and North African wolves have the most acoustically distinct howls and differ quite a bit from Holarctic grey wolves. So you can see there's definitely something different going on with these guys over here. We'll have a look at another adult, because I think the baby model was not much changed at all. We'll have a look at you because you got cool scars. Anyway, so Himalayan wolves tend to prefer wild over domestic prey, as they prefer to prey on Tibetan gazelle over the larger white-tipped deer, and the plains-dwelling Tibet gazelle over the blue sheep that's a cliff dweller. Supplements of their diet would be the small Himalayan marmot, big-eared pika, and woolly hare. They tend to avoid livestock when prey is available, but habitat encroachment and depletion of wild populations does lead them to conflict with herders. They're to protect them, securing healthy wild prey populations, and setting aside wildlife habitats and refuges is essential for these guys. Other recorded species they have been known to eat is Bactrian camel, Yarkland deer, Tibetan red deer, Siberian roe deer, Siberian ibex, Tibetan wild ass, Przewalski's horses, wild yaks, markhor, algae in Europe. So they do have quite a wide diet. Historical sources indicate they did occasionally eat children, and within the proposed wildlife sanctuary that they're having there, the intensity of livestock depletion assessed in 3 villages have found that Tibetan wolves are the most prevalent predator, accounting for about 60% of total livestock losses, followed by the snow leopard and the Eurasian lynx. Their most frequent domestic prey was domestic goats, followed by sheep at 32% for goats and 30% for sheep, yaks at 15% and horses at 13%. And the wolves killed horses significantly more and goats less, and as would be expected for their relative abundance. But in terms of their conservation, the wolves in Bhutan, India, Nepal and Pakistan are all protected, and luckily they are protected, which prohibits hunting as well. A zoo needs permission for the government to acquire a wolf. They are listed endangered in Jammu and Kashmir, which is quite good, and they are protected in those areas. And I hope they do more study on them as well, because I think they're potentially their own species, and I hope there's more research done on them to kind of sort out that taxonomy there, because that taxonomy for these wolves and whole Arctic wolves in general is very interesting. But yeah, another really cool species. Definitely a big fan of that. So last but certainly not least, we've got a mod by Monsoon. We have got the Diana monkey. You know how you not love a good monkey. Monkey. So it's another Diana monkey. So let's have a look. Done by Monsoon, who always does an awesome job with their mods. So the Diana monkey, or Cetopithecus diana. These guys are a old world monkey found in the high canopy of the Sierra Leone, Libya, and western Colony Ramon. And they're named after their white brow. As you can see, they got that white brow there, which resembles the brown of the Roman goddess Diana. This black-grey Ganon has a white throat, a chestnut-shaped brow band, ruff, and beard. And there are 2 taxa that were formerly considered subspecies. So there was the rollaway monkey, which I've covered before, and the Dryas monkey, which is found in the Congo, and the other one's found in Guyana. So those were all considered subspecies of the Diana monkey, but are now considered their own species. But these guys have been found in West Africa, from Sierra Leone to Cote de Rebel, and they're quite endangered. They are endangered, yes, so we'll get into that. Habitat, they are found primarily in primary forests, but do not thrive in secondary forests. And they are considered endangered by the IUCN because of habitat destruction and hunting for bushmeat. In terms of its description, though, the Diana monkey ranges from about 40 to 55 centimeters in length, excluding the tail, with a uniform 33 to 4 centimeter diameter and 50 to 75 centimeter long tail. And adults weigh typically from 4 to 7 kilograms. They're generally black or dark grey with a white throat, chestnut-shaped brow band, ruff, and beard. And the brow band gives the name because we mentioned the Diana monkey. Their underarms are also white, and they have a white stripe down their thighs, you can see there, while the backs of their thighs are a chestnut colour. And apart from the brow band, they're kind of got a very rough fur. So in terms of their behaviour, individually healthy Diana monkeys can live for about 20 years, and the species of monkey is active during the day and feeds on all levels on the canopy, rarely venturing down to the ground as for fear of predation. Diana monkeys then retreat to the upper levels of the trees at night, though they do not make nests, preferring to sleep on branches, and they typically feed on fruits, blossoms and leaves, though occasionally on insects and invertebrates as well. The monkeys in turn are hunted by various animals such as the crowned hawk eagle, the African leopard, even common chimpanzees, and of course humans, which is a little bit sad because, you know, humans killing cool monkeys. But anyway, really, really awesome mod there. The Dana monkey is actually quite a noisy monkey as well. It's a noisy presence in the forest. Its marked coloration allows a wide range of visual social signals, with female Diana monkeys producing specific alarm calls, alert calls, or greeting and contact calls, depending on the occasion. In moments of predatory threat, they utilize distinct calls based on the specific predator in question, and some researchers suggest the vocability of females' vocalizations are larger and more variable than males. So other forest residents, like the yellow-casqued hornbill, in addition to other birds and other primates as well, are able to discriminate between them and use them as appropriate action should a mutual threat be present in the area. So they're kind of like a sigil. You know, if they see something, they'll alarm call, and other birds will listen for their calls because they know, oh, that means that danger. I got to go hide. In a similar situation, India has been observed with axis deer and Hanan's langur in the trees above them. So the two species are inseparable and live in near symbiosis as they kind of watch each other's backs. So the monkeys will hang out in the trees to watch for prey, and then the animals on the ground will watch for prey as well. So it's kind of a mutual relationship. And the deers will make shrill barks and call if they spot a tiger, leopard, dhole, or wolf, or the monkeys will scream and alert the deer if they run. So they alert each other. They watch each other's backs, pretty much, which is really cool. In terms of their communication as well, they both communicate both to local group members and distant competitors with different types of alarm sounds, with Diana monkeys producing loud noises to make other monkeys aware of leopards and other competition in the area. So in terms of their breeding, we'll have another cute little baby as we talk about their breeding. So, groups consist typically of a single male and a number of reproducing females and their infants. In good condition, adult females reproduce annually, and gestation will last for about 5 months, and then the young is nursed for another 6 months, though normally only a single infant is born. And although the young are born in fairly well-developed condition, with open eyes and able to grasp their mothers, at least in zoo condition, the other monkeys appear anxious and possessive, rarely leaving young infants by themselves. So typically they'll always have their infant around them. As infants grow, however, they become very playful, and juveniles will reach sexual maturity at about 3 years of age. Daughters will typically remain in their mother's social group, while the males have to leave to go find another group as when they attain sexual maturity, which is very common for a lot of species of mammal. But in terms of human relevance, like most primates, they can carry diseases that can be transferred to humans, such as yellow fever or tuberculosis. Native tribes also poach these monkeys that sell their meat as luxury meat and is seen as a commodity. So that's another thing there. But yeah, really, really cool species, and another great one done by Monsoon. Definitely a big fan. So I'm going to pull out of here, and we're going to thank everyone. So yeah, as I mentioned, hopefully a shorter one. Should be. But another really cool species that we get to talk about. Some ones that you don't get very often to talk about. I don't know what's up with the sensitivity of oat mouse. But anyway, we're going to carry on. So yeah, thank you, Scott, for those wonderful frogs. Thank you, Monsoon, for the Dana monkey. Thank you, Liver Wolf, for the wolf. Thank you, Mega Kebab, for the brocket deer. And thank you, Great Cakes, for the interesting ancient camel. So yeah, I really, really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you guys like and subscribe, always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified about anything. So if you guys enjoyed this video, if you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.